Should we get controversial today? I agree. Well, hello, reader friends, and welcome back, or welcome for the first time if you are new here. My name is Lori Beth, and welcome to my booktube channel, where I like to talk about all things bookish. Specifically, in today's video, we are going to talk about some anti-bookish things, I guess, if you want to say that. We're going to do the anti-TBR tag, and I'm doing this because, as you've heard me talk about ad nauseum by this point in time, I started my booktube channel at the beginning of 2024, and I haven't really touched on all of some of the classic content in the booktube realm as of yet, and I'm slowly working my way through things. And as I was prepping for this week's video, I was kind of looking back at some of the things I've truly enjoyed watching on booktube, and one of them is the tried and true anti-TBR tag. So if you have not seen this video before, this was created, gosh, a couple of years ago now, and I will find the original video to this, but this was created as a way to talk about things that we don't like in the book world, like books that we would never read, authors we don't really vibe with, and genres that really just don't deserve to be on our bookshelf space. So the original anti-TBR tag video came with a list of 8 questions, and the idea is that I will ask myself these questions and answer them as brutally honestly as possible, because what is the point if we cannot just talk about things on an honest platform? Isn't that the whole idea of these spaces and communities that we create with each other? I at least hope that it is. This video is not meant to be me coming off as a jerk. This is just me once again showing how subjective reading really is, and it should be. Shouldn't we just be filling our time with things that we truly enjoy? I have created an entire video about how I wasted time on very specific things, which I will link down below. And if I could get that time back, I would replace it with things that I truly enjoyed. So in my opinion, this is just a way to avoid being in that situation time and time again. Although, you know, we are human, and I'm sure that I will continue to just surprise myself. So I thought a fun thing to do with this tag, since this is kind of an older booktube tag now, is maybe doing like a little revamp on it. We would put our own little twist on it, and that twist is going to be you, yes you, trying to change my mind on any of the answers that I give in today's video. This can be on all of the questions that I answer, or it can be one that really stands out to you that you feel very passionately about. Listen, I'm an open-minded person. These are just my thoughts and feelings as of now, but if you think that you can change my mind on any of the answers that I provide in today's video, I want to hear it. Let's start a conversation in the comments below. But with that being said, we do have a few questions to go over, so we're going to go ahead and jump right in. All right, so first question on our list. A popular book everyone loves that you have no interest in. This was actually harder to answer than I thought, because there ended up being quite a few that I wanted to put in this as my answer, but I decided to go with Dune. And hear me out. So I have seen both movies that are out, and I can fully say that I have enjoyed both movies. And I can also say that before the movies even came out, I had an interest in reading this book. I was like, people love this story. This sounds like something I can get behind. After seeing the movies that, let me remind you, I fully enjoyed, I had zero interest in reading it. I was like, this really just isn't my jam. Like, it's good. I like the movie, I think, because it was so visually appealing, and not like I didn't like the story. It's just not my jam. There's just too much dryness for me, and that's not even a pun related to the fact that it is a book called Dune. That was literally not intended. It's just not a story that really excites me. It doesn't bring that much to my life. And I want to say that I'm thankful that I saw the movies, because I didn't read the book, and I didn't end up wasting my time with something that I really didn't have interest in at the end of the day. So I guess that was a win-win for me. All right, question number 2. A classic book or author you have no interest in. Okay, so this is interesting because I had a recent experience that made this very easy to answer. And before this experience, it would have taken me a minute to kind of think about like a classic book or classic book author that I just didn't really see myself wanting to read, because I really do like to, again, stay open-minded and read from a lot of authors. But I just so happened to listen to a podcast that talked about Harper Lee and her experience writing To Kill a Mockingbird. I also discovered that Harper Lee was very good friends with Truman Capote and provided hours and hours of research for his book, In Cold Blood. So 2 things came out of this podcast that I did not know previously. 1, Truman Capote never gave acknowledgement to Harper Lee and the work that she helped provide for him writing one of his most popular books. 2, he has put out into the universe that he actually assisted in writing To Kill a Mockingbird, or that he wrote most of it, or that it was his idea, or there was like all these weird things. Apparently, their relationship fell out when Harper Lee's book gained more success than him, and to me, it was a very clear case of toxic masculinity just ruining the party again, because this brilliant woman just couldn't have done these things on her own. No. Of course she had someone help her write her book, and she didn't help him write his book at all. I don't know. The whole thing just left such a bad taste in my mouth, and I'm not going to lie. I have had In Cold Blood on my own TBR for so long because the story itself is so up my alley and my weird affinity for true crime. But after listening to that podcast, I was like, yeah, this guy is not for me. I think my life would be just as well if I never experienced him. All right, so I think we're going to get into some controversial territory here. But again, I'm trying to be honest on all of these questions, and I am just gonna lay it all out there. An author whose books you have no interest in. Are you ready? I'm going to say it. Brandon Sanderson. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to put it out there. Do what you want with that. I just have no interest in him as an author or his books. And if I'm being totally honest, I don't really have much of a reason besides the fact I just like have read the synopsis for, like, let's take Mistborn, for example. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't really like appeal to me. And not only that, some of the worlds that he has created are so in depth and kind of intense as far as like the size of the series that he has created. I know he doesn't have strictly just book series, but that is also another reason where I'm like, if I don't think I'm going to vibe with book 1 out of a series, why would I waste my time reading it if I'm not going to continue on with the series? You know what I mean? Like, there's only so much time in my day that I get to sit down and read the things that I really want to read. Why would I spend that time just like fighting through something that I don't even from the start have an interest in, and then start it knowing that there's like this entire world behind it that I'm never going to complete? I just don't have the interest. Of course, I've read the reviews. I see that his books have really good reviews. I just almost have like this feeling that I wouldn't love his writing or maybe appreciate it as much as some others do. So I'm like, why even go there? You know, like, why go there if I don't have to? All right, moving on. So an author you have read a couple of books from and have decided that their books are not for you. I have actually talked about this in a few of my videos, and I will fully admit that I started with this author in a time of heavy reading slumping, and I picked up the book Verity at my local bookstore and read the synopsis, and it wasn't very long, and I was like, oh, this sounds kind of interesting, and I just like blasted through that book. I ate it up. I loved it so much. So then I started reading more from this author, who at this point in time, I'm sure you've guessed, is Colleen Hoover. And the more I read, the more I was like, hold up, these are getting a little out of hand. So I can handle a few romances, and I enjoy romances, more like contemporary romance novels, but I can only handle them in so much quantity, if I'm being honest. And maybe that was the problem, is I really liked her books that kind of helped me get out of that slumping mood I was in. So I started reading too many too quick. But all of a sudden I just like hit this wall of like, what am I reading here? Like these are getting so unbelievable that it's like not even worth the 300 pages that I'm spending my time on. So she is one that I included in that video of a book that I read that I'll never get my time back from. And I have since decided I'm probably never going to read another book by her again because I just don't think I really need that in my life. You know, like I don't love the vibe that she brings to the party. All right, moving on to our next question. A genre you have no interest in, or a genre you tried to get into and couldn't. This one, I'm not gonna lie, was a little bit harder to answer, but when I really like sat down and thought about it, and I landed on sci-fi. And when I say sci-fi, I mean like straight up sci-fi. I just have zero interest in that genre. Now, sci-fi books that are kind of a blend of things, like a sci-fi fantasy, a sci-fi romance, I can definitely get behind. But books that are specifically just that very heavy context of like political intrigue and nothing else doesn't really fill my cup. You know, it's just not my jam. And I have heard of tons of amazing authors that write specifically in the sci-fi genre or books that people just absolutely adore in the sci-fi genre. But I look at them and I'm like, I don't know. I just have so many other things on my list that I could read instead of this like 400-page book about people like floating through space and like planets trying to shoot each other. That I just don't want to. I don't know. I don't know what other way to say that besides like, it's just not for me, and that's okay. Oh, a book you bought and will never read, which, stand by. Okay, sorry. Thought I had everything prepped. It did feel very weird to just be talking for so long without holding any books up. That's not usually my jam in a video. And I thought I got the book out that I wanted to use, the one and only book that I was going to show on camera, and I didn't, so what do you know? But a book that I bought I'll never read is actually Margot's Got Money Troubles. And this is one of my book of the month picks. And I chose it based on the synopsis, which I thought sounded kind of goofy and funny, like a lighthearted read. A book about a girl who has money problems and she kind of turns to the new day and age way to make money on the internet, if you know what I mean. But after I had it in hand and I was kind of planning out some of my TBRs for the later months of the year, I looked at the reviews for this book and they were not great. And before you hate on me, before hating on books that have bad reviews, I don't do that often. I will actually read through reviews and not just the star rating on a book, because I have read plenty of books that people have rated quite low that I rated very highly. I really enjoyed them. So it was more so what people were actually saying about this book. It was not really all that great. The writing wasn't that great, but the story itself just was not all that worth it to read. So I don't do this often either, because as I've also talked about, I have limited space on my bookshelves, just like most of us do. And I try to be pretty conscious of the books I bring into my home. I don't just like willy-nilly buy things just to buy them. I really, really try not to do that. But this was a case where I did buy the book and I just don't really think I'll ever end up reading this. So this will probably get donated. Which, you know, this could be someone's cup of tea. So there's nothing wrong with that either. All right, so I was super into this question. I couldn't really wait to answer this. I have also mentioned this before in a few other videos, but sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. A series you have no interest in reading, or a series you started and DNF'd. Enter Fourth Wing. Well, not actually Fourth Wing. I read Fourth Wing and I loved Fourth Wing. I devoured that book. Read maybe 30 to 40% of Iron Flame. Changed my mind. Did not need that in my life. I couldn't with that book. I don't know if I have ever been part of an experience quite like that, where I have loved something so thoroughly from book one and then kind of detested it in the very next book. Like, the juxtaposition between book one and book two for me was literally night and day. I just kept thinking to myself, was this an instance where this author came to fame really quickly in this series? Like, I know that Rebecca Yarros has written multiple books before the Fourth Wing series, but this one specifically just blew up in the internet world. Book Talk, Booktube, Bookstagram, you name it, that book was everywhere. And for good reason. I thought it was very, very good. It was interesting. I liked the whole fantasy blend that you got in that book with the dragons and the school setting and the enemies to lovers romance. It like gave you all of those delicious things that you really like to read in like a series you are like, yeah, this is it. Like, I am in this one. And book two just felt like she truly did just have to make that book come out as fast as possible to kind of keep the momentum going for this series. So with that being said, I completely DNF'd Iron Flame. With the release of book three coming out, I have zero interest in even continuing. It was so bad for me that I was like, there's no way I am going to spend my time reading these books that are like, sorry, I'm looking behind me because I do actually have that one on my shelf too. Over what, like 500 pages at least, I would say. They're not tiny books, and I'm not going to waste my time on something. Like, I'm not going to fight for something just to say that I fought for it. Like, it should feel natural. I'm just going to put that out there. If the feelings you're not getting for a book, like if there's no organic love for a book or a story or an author, why bother? Why are you wasting your time? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's not worth it. I don't know. That's my opinion. All right. So we have made it to our last question on the list, and that is a new release you have no interest in. This was actually kind of a challenging one to answer because in my opinion, I think that 2024 is a pretty solid year as far as releases go. For multiple genres. Like, it wasn't just a few here or there. I think that every genre was like kind of hitting it hard with releases. But the one I landed on, and it's because I do see it so frequently, is The Women by Kristen Hanna, because it was almost the answer for the question about like a genre I have no interest in, and that is historical fiction. I like historical fiction blended with fantasy. That I can totally get behind. I love having that historical vibe with some fantasy elements that just like really hold my interest, but straight up historical fiction is not really my jam. And I kind of just don't have a lot of interest in books by authors like Kristen Hanna. Not to say that she's not a phenomenal author. That is not what I mean by that. It's just the type of storylines she writes are not anything I really want to spend my time reading. I don't know. I don't have another way to answer that. It's just that I don't know that I want to read another story about a war nurse going through the trials and tribulations of the time and like fighting for certain things if there's no ghosts or vampires or witches or something of the sort. And I don't know how that makes me sound to the world, but that's just who I am as a person. All right, so that brings us to the end of our list. Those were all of the questions from the original anti-TBR book tag video. That means that these are things you will most likely never see on my personal TBR unless you can change my mind on something. So this is where you come in. Think about one of the questions or multiple questions that I asked myself in today's video, what my answers to those questions were, and if you are passionate about that, change my mind. Drop it in a comment below. Let me know why I should change my mind on the answers that I gave. Or if you don't feel like you have anything to change my mind on and you want to answer one of the questions yourself, drop that in a comment down below as well. I am here for it. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your opinions. What would never end up on your personal TBR? I love it. Let's talk about it openly. It shouldn't be taboo. If you liked this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button because it always helps a girl out. As always, it has been an absolute blast and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one.